Welcome back. Try not to put you to sleep here this afternoon. I want to personally thank Steve for allowing me to go first right after the meal. I remember one time when I was in high school in FFA, I had to speak at a meeting right after a large dinner. And one of my most embarrassing moments, so I got to share this. And I was up, and about 3 minutes into my presentation, out of nowhere, this large belch appeared right into the microphone. And of course, the crowd thought it was hilarious, especially when you're talking to high school students. Well, I was embarrassed, and I let the crowd cool down, and I went on. About 3 minutes later, it struck me that was pretty daggone funny. And so I started getting tickled. So I was the one up front laughing, and everybody else was had gotten over it. So hopefully nothing like that will happen here this afternoon. First off, I want to thank Steve and the group out of Illinois for putting this conference on, because those of us who are actively involved in private wells, having this type of dialogue and discussion is absolutely the most wonderful thing that can happen in the world, to bring all these folks together. So let's give them a big round of applause for doing that. So with that said, I'm one of those guys that gets to work with everything that you all do on a daily basis. A little bit about myself. I'm a partner in a plumbing and water systems wholesaler. And you go, okay, well, what's that got to do with this? Well, we sell everything involved in pumps and water wells, all the way into the water line piping into the house. We have a retail showroom, so we sell faucets and toilets and all that type of fun stuff. We heat water. We use all the new technology. But then we really specialize in water treatment. And I'm from the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, breadbasket of the Confederacy, and the things that make the area so beautiful also create a lot of unique water problems that we've run into. So I've spent the last almost 38 years of my life dealing with stuff that everybody else wanted to run away from. And so that's where I've kind of developed an expertise in the ag and thinking out of the box a little bit. So how do we get that idea across? And we're here at this conference, we're talking about maybe the problems we run into private wells. But as Richard said earlier, that, private wells are one of the most safe and secure methods of the public and the consumer being able to get water into their home. So yes, we do have issues. Other systems have issues as well. We're not here to bash or berate anybody, but there's no silver bullet. I think Anthony, were you the one that said the silver bullet thing? Okay, am I getting everybody covered? I'm supposed to mention, except for Jeff Williams in the back. So Jeff, my score just went up, right? Thank you. So it's a wonderful, wonderful business to be involved, whether we're in the regulatory side, we're in the distribution side, we're in the education side. It really is fun and exciting, and I think these are very challenging and wonderful times to be involved in. The Chinese have a proverb that says, may you live in interesting times. And I think we can truly say that we all get to do that. So I'm honored, happy, and humbled to be here with the group today. And with all these questions that have come out about water and septic and private wells, I have a pat answer for every single one of you that asked a question, posed a question, or is thinking about a question, an answer that is absolutely correct in every situation I've ever encountered in my life. And it's only 2 words. And the response is, it depends. Because there's so many constituents in all the stuff that we're dealing with and the angle you're coming from, that there is no one absolutely correct, direct answer that can be used in every situation. So that's why education is so important. I have the opportunity and the privilege of serving on the WQA Education Committee. I'm on the Regional and State Governmental Affairs, and I'm also chairing the committee to plan our next year's conference. So some of you may be hearing from me as potential speakers for our conference next year in Orlando. So why are we going to talk about a couple of these weird and wacky things? And top one? Okay, that's me. That was my Halloween costume. I got the most look like who you are in real life award. Got me a half gallon of scotch. I'm very happy about that. Anybody knows me? That's pretty much the way I am too. So what I get to do in every day is dealing with contractors, with plumbers, with mechanical contractors, with water well contractors, state regulators, and dealing ultimately with the consumer who has a water problem and go, where do I go next? And I think that's a theme we take away from this conference as we've all come together and we talk. So where do we go next? How do I know if I'm getting the right solution or not, or the correct recommendation, or who the heck do I trust? Well, you've heard a lot of examples of places to go to find those resources. And so I've tried in my professional career to utilize those resources. So I got involved early on in my career. People started asking me, I was out on the road just selling general plumbing supplies, and somebody would say, I have this big iron bacteria problem. X company, they didn't want to deal with it, or they threw up their hands what to do. So I was young and naive, and so I started asking questions. And anybody that made a career in sales, what's the number one thing you do? You ask questions. God gave us one mouth and two ears for a reason. We ask a question and we listen twice as long for the answer to come back. That's how we determine how we can help that consumer the best, no matter what phase of the industry we're involved in to do that. So I had an older gentleman who took me under his wing. He became my mentor. He gave me a lot of guidance. And he helped steer me in the direction of concentrating on water treatment. So then I got involved in WQA, and they had the technical resources. So, you know, I'm like maybe some of you, when I went through school and was studying chemistry, I go, just get me through here. You know, I'll take my B, I'll be happy with it. Mom won't get mad at me, but I'll never need to use it. Then I get in the plumbing business, and I knew there were things that worked and didn't, especially pertaining to water treatment. So I went back and relearned chemistry, because now it made sense. I wanted to know the chemical equations, you know, when we reduce things or we add things and we do ion exchange. How does all that work? So I worked hard to educate myself on that, and I utilized resources like the Water Systems Council, WQA, National Groundwater for well items. There are great resources out there to utilize to be able to train yourself on that. But I went to my first water treatment class, and it was 3 days in Indiana, and I came back and I said, wow, I was just overwhelmed with all of it, how we do this. So my best friend, who I happened to work with, I said I just bought my first house and I needed a water softener. So I said, tell you what, I'm going to be our first customer. We're going to test my water. We're going to do what they told me to do. We're going to size a unit. And when we had 3 water softeners in stock in our business, we thought we had one heck of an inventory. I can tell you on an average day, I move 30 to 60 units a day now. So we've actually grown slightly from what we have then. And I went from the point where I managed every job to I have no clue where they go. I mean, we just have a wonderful dealer network and equipment goes out. So I only deal with kind of the oddball stuff. Well, I'll share with you here for a few minutes. But we started over the old beer and pizza rule. So I told Tim, come over. We're going to figure out how to do this. And on a Saturday afternoon, and a 6-pack or 2 or 3, and a couple of pizzas later, we installed our first softener. And I started enjoying my first water conditioner system, of which I've owned many since then. And that's kind of essentially how I got started into the business. And it's really we all start that simply to get in this business. You have to do it. I'm a hands-on guy. The technical stuff is great, but I think what has allowed me to learn what I've learned is I've been in the trenches. I've been under the crawl spaces, and some of it's tough, and you sweat, and when you have water dripping down the back of your underwear when you're loading a large filter unit, you wonder, why am I doing this? But then when you get the results of that good water test afterwards, you know it's all worthwhile. So I learned from the school of hard knocks like a lot of us have. But I've come back and relearned the science that goes along with it. So a couple of the jobs that were kind of fun that I did a little earlier in my career, I got a call from a company called British United Turkeys out of London, England. And they had a farm back in Lewisburg, West Virginia, and they said, we have a unique water situation that no one seems to address. We have salty water, and what they raised there was the grandparent stock of the turkeys. I'm sure you all have seen turkey farms, the big barns and the big turkeys that, we buy for Thanksgiving and Christmas. This is the breeding stock ahead of that. These aren't turkeys, they're like small ostriches that are in these barns. And so we ran into connate water. Anybody know what connate water is? It's old trapped ocean water. We live here in the mountains, so we have these folds in the river and valleys. And the reason we have all of our limestone because it's dead sea life that has dissolved and compressed over the years to form the calcium and the limestone formations that we have. But in some of those areas, some of that seawater hadn't retreated. And so there's pockets of it, and we refer to that as connate water. And so it can be tens of thousands of years old, and that was their water source. So they needed some specialized treatment to deal with that. But the other thing is, I told you these birds are really big. Well, they have something called biosecurity. You ever hear of biosecurity? We were talking about, the gentleman that was talking about all the radon. Don't you need a suit? I needed a suit. But more than that, I had to get naked to get into that job because I could not be on a farm for 3 months before I went there, and I had to completely strip down to go and double shower in before I could even step on that property to do any analysis or any type of work. And believe it or not, they said it was hard to find somebody that was willing to do that. Well, I've not been known for doing some of the smartest things in my life, but it was all good. They gave me a shower curtain so there was nobody standing there gawking at me. Not that anybody would want to, except maybe to get a good laugh. And all the equipment had to be sanitized and sent in, and I did not get it back because once it's on the property, it stays on the property. So that was an interesting job that we ran into to take care of that water. So another situation, I got called out on a job. Anybody see these big satellite dishes sitting around along the side of the road? Well, we had a company that has a telecommunication system. They're now defunct, been bought out by somebody else, but they were having water line leaks within their building. And there's all these oscilloscopes and all these multi-million dollars worth of computers that track the satellite dishes. They track the satellites. So all the communications coming out of Africa into the U.S. was coming into this station. But they had a water line suspended around the building, and so the water line would get pinholes in it. And they had all these people in, engineers from Texas and from all over the world, electrical engineers, to say, why in the world are we getting these pinhole leaks? And so I got called in, I looked at it, tested the water, and said, it's not the water quality. I think you have electrolysis and stray voltage going on here. And they said, that's impossible. We're on a giant earth ring magnet. It's 3 foot in diameter, 50 feet down, covers the entire length of the building. We got the best ground in the world. I said, okay. I'm just a dumb farm boy, so what I know about it. So I said, where's that copper pipe connected to the ground? Where's it bonded? What do you mean, where's it bonded? I said, where is it connected to the building? Well, it's got to be connected somewhere. So long story short, we trace all the lines down. The copper pipe is insulated on hangers and goes through a plastic pipe through the wall of the building, it's never connected to the building. So it's not grounded. So we actually had a free-floating copper rod that's picking up all this stray voltage, all this computerized equipment in there, and we actually measured 40 volts of power that was running through that copper pipe. And of course, it was eating it up. And then it would spray and take out $1 million worth of computer every time it happened. So all we did is go down to the local hardware store, get a little clamp, piece of copper wire and a screw, attached it to the pipe, screwed it to the steel beam of the building, problem solved. I just saved them $500,000 in engineering cost. Now, had nothing to do with the water. I got called on because they thought it was a water quality, but it wasn't a water issue at all. It was a stray voltage. And some of us have had some pretty interesting discussions about how oftentimes when you become the water guy, you own the problem that they have in that situation. And that's not always the case. So everybody gets afraid of plumbing and water. I mean, what's worse can happen? You get wet. But when you're dealing with electricity, you know, that stuff hurts. It can kill you. You can die from it. I have yet to meet a plumber that died from a water pipe spraying water in his face. Maybe it's happened, but I certainly have missed it. So people do all kinds of funky things that may or may not be related. Another situation just down the road from us, poor lady, 20 years. A number of water systems put in because she had pinhole leaking in her pipe. And her husband had taken care of it. He passed away. She was stuck with it. I get the phone call. How can we resolve this problem? Everybody wants to put another pH unit in, and that's what I've had. I've already had a bunch of them and hadn't resolved the problems. Guess what? Stray voltage. Had nothing to do with the water quality. It was all about an improper ground from the cable system attached to the plumbing. So at WQA, we talk about when we go in and cut the pipes, we have to secure the bond across the plastic piping so that we have integrity of the system. Another case, I get called in, a farmer says, it's got to be my water quality. My cows won't milk. They're not producing anything. Guess what? The cows were getting shocked because of stray voltage. Had nothing to do with the water quality. That when a cow comes in to let their milk down, they send a receptor from the brain that travels down their nervous system to their udder, which allows them to release some milk. If they get a little tingling, guess what? You ever try to go to the bathroom and you got a little tingle, and you couldn't go? Same kind of thing happens with a cow, okay? They won't let their milk down. Creates problems. So a lot of times we get called out on water treatment, and it's not water treatment at all. So I've blown up $10,000 worth of camera equipment because we had a drain line that wouldn't work on a commercial water softener. So we had a drain line that was stopped up. So we were looking to resolve the drain line, and all of a sudden, we go to put the camera head into the pipe. It was metal pipe, and it went kapow, and it blew up. $10,000 sewer camera because a homeowner had driven a nail into a wire, doing it himself, and the nail touched the metal pipe that was the sewer pipe. Also, how many of you installed water softeners in here? Anybody? A couple of you in the back, okay. Some of you have installed water treatment, okay. How difficult do you think it would be to catch a water softener on fire? Pretty difficult, right? It's not really much there to burn. Full of water, pipes full of water, okay. I go out to a poultry plant. 1.2 million gallons a day service on a water softener. I'm doing the commissioning on it. I asked the maintenance guys, okay, I'm getting ready to plug this 115-volt power supply into the outlet so we can program the water softener. We have 115 volts, correct? Absolutely, just checked it yesterday. I'm 10 foot up on man lift having to get to this control. So it's not just like walking up to the podium and doing it. I mean, these tanks literally took up half this room was the system on that. So I plug it in. Fire starts jumping 3 feet high out of the controls. The computerized module that was up on the wall completely disintegrated. And the first thing they said was, "It's not your fault." And I said, "Damn right it's not my fault," because I asked the question. So we caught it on fire. Well, come to find out, the night before, they had a sump pump go out. The nighttime maintenance crew came in, changed some wires in the back panel. We now had not 115 volts, 408 volts, 3-phase. It burnt the plug right out of my hand. I got the 2-degree burns. I can still see the marks a little bit from when that happened. So things happen. Are they good? They bad? Yeah, they happen. But when you're out in the field making a living on an everyday world, those kind of things happen. We have electricity coming out of power lines, jumping down to water lines and equipment. Had a lady in Northern Virginia said her horses kept getting shocked. We cut the water line off. We cut the power off. I said, "Where?" She said, "How is that happening? Your equipment is defective." I love that from a manufacturer-supplier standpoint. The words that we love to hear, right, guys in the back? Your pump is defective. It's no good. It's the equipment's fault. It's never the installer. It's never the application. It's always the equipment. Well, if you isolate the equipment, how can it be its fault? So here what she had done is installed these waters that had a grounding rod under a high voltage power line. And so the electricity was jumping off the power lines, looking for that ground, the point of least resistance. If you don't know anything about water and electricity, they both act the same way. They go to the point of least resistance in the system. So if you're ever troubleshooting and you don't know where to start, just think like a water drop or a piece of electricity flowing and say, "Where's the easiest way for me to get there?" And you're going to find your problem. That's something I can leave you with on that. Okay, I know for a fact, because I've observed this firsthand, that some of you like drinking wine. Am I correct? Okay, yeah. Hey, this gentleman, he's not bashful at all. He's proud of it. I like it too, and I like helping to make it. We had a big winery outside of town, and they developed a sulfur problem. Anybody knows what happens if you get the wrong kind of sulfides or sulfur in the water that you're trying to make your wine? What happens to it? You get stuff floating around in the bottle that's not very appetizing. So they had equipment in. A company that had originally put the equipment in refused to come back. We got called in on the job to try to come up with a solution. I engineered the job, and we had a contractor install it. And the very day that they're bottling, wineries, there are portable rigs that go around the country just bottling the wine for these guys, especially these smaller vineyards. And they use the water to rinse the bottles and to rinse the lines out. So they're using this sulfur-laden water, bottling their white wine, and the vintner is going nuts because it looks like it's got little worms crawling around in all the bottles. So, all that hard work and effort, they got to throw away. It's a problem. But we put the water treatment in, fired it up while they're bottling, and this is one of those feel-good moments when you run into some of these weird jobs because the sulfur was immediately gone, and as soon as that clean water hit, we had good bottleable product. And so we were able to save their crop. So I call this kind of wacky and weird and wonderful all the same because it's not all bad. It's a lot of fun. You got to have fun because you can't make this stuff up. Question came up earlier. Is it a conflict of interest for somebody who's selling equipment to be able to do the testing? I posed that to the Virginia Water Well Association 25 years ago because I was contemplating operating our own water testing lab, which we do today. And so they said, yes, that's a direct conflict of interest. But what happened is we had so many consumers and contractors coming to us and say, look, I mail the samples off. I tend to get the same results because the chemistry equalizes, gases come off. So I'd been doing my own testing. Obviously, if you're doing these big commercial jobs, I kind of wanted to know what was going on, not always depended on somebody else. So we started our own lab, and it's probably been one of the best things we ever did in our business, because now I have people driving 4 or 5 miles away, will bring us a water analysis. We can analyze it right then and there, and they drive away with the equipment. And why is that happening? Because the consumer is hungry for knowledge, and they're hungry for someone who knows what they're doing. And I think the one takeaway that I've had in networking with a lot of you all while we're here is that while we're all gathered in this room trying to educate ourselves, educate other parts of the industry, our ultimate goal is how do we get that message out to the consumer? How do they feel secure when they're purchasing equipment? And how do we back that up? Well, we do that by having a state-certified lab, by having people that are certified in independent parties like WQA, by using well contractors that are master well licensed contractors, that working with health department and health officials who are aware of what's going on and aren't so closed-minded to say that there isn't new technology and new opportunities out there to work together. So I'm grateful to be part of this group and to be invited here, because I think we're not just in a profession, folks, we're in a calling. At one time in my life, I contemplated becoming a pastor, and I ended up going into the plumbing business. How's that go? But I am grateful and thankful to the good Lord that I get to work with something as wonderful and something that I can be in an industry that is helping people improve the qualities of their life, who improve the betterment of their health, who make our environment better. So I want everybody, as I conclude, and I'm going to stop because I know I'm about out of time, I want everybody to take the right hand and raise it in the air. I want you to bring it down across your left shoulder and give yourself a giant pat on the back. And I'm going to conclude with that. So thank you all very much for your kind indulgence.
Thank you, Mike. Hey, so we got questions. You're not done yet.
Why the hell am I here?
Yeah. No, the first question I think you answered, but it's, are you ELAP certified, your lab?
Yes.
Yeah.
We are.
And so it says, why do most people install whole house RO, it's like 9K, and replace all of the copper piping with plastic piping, 22K, instead of fixing a stray current that was dissolved
I know where that question
solder
came
for
from.
1/10 the cost? So, I think the stray current thing is something many of us just aren't even aware of.
Yeah.
How many people really didn't realize that can really happen? I mean, it's because it's a big thing. Learned a lot about it just this week.
At WQA, I did a whole presentation on stray voltage and stray current and grounding and bonding. And it's not voodoo science. It's a real thing. It's just one component of the corrosion issue that we deal with, which is pH dissolved gases and all those things.
Yep.
But
all right.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.